Rebecca. So good to see
Hi.
you.
Yeah, you too, again.
Yeah, I know. Rebecca and I keep running into each other this week, which is awesome. So super
Yep.
excited to see her again though on here and happy to chat a little bit with you as a woman who shifted.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So just so everyone knows, I'm Sarah Rose and I run our Facebook group, Re-Energizing Professional Women. And I own Fresh Rise Group. And basically we help women uh, really find their footing in that professional space, especially mid-career. It gets really hard to keep ourselves motivated and energized in work. So much comes at us, and we're juggling home and life, all those things together. So hopefully this series can help you just see what is possible in your life. We've got Rebecca here today, and she's part of our Re-Energizing Professional Women group as well. So glad you're in that group.
Thank you.
But Rebecca is the owner of Rebecca Thomas, More Than a Life Coach, and she does year-long coaching programs and works with women. So she's going to talk to us a lot about some changes in how she goes about life and how she goes about thinking about things today. So we're super excited to have her. So Rebecca, tell us where you're at in the world.
Right now I'm physically in Granville, Michigan, so
Okay.
not too far from you. I just got back from a weekend in Nashville, so yeah, but I'm in
Nice.
Granville right now. Yep.
Yeah. And you kind of seem to be traveling around quite a bit.
A little bit and hopefully more as we continue, but yeah, I definitely try to get out of the Grand Rapids area, not because there's anything wrong. I'm just a very nomadic person and I love to explore other spaces and people and cultures. So yeah, I love traveling around.
Yeah, totally. Okay. Sounds good. Well, just tell us a little bit about, maybe highlight one of the shifts that you've made and kind of tell us about that. Get us started.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that really sticks out to me a lot, especially something that I feel like I don't see in as many people, is really shifting into radical acceptance. So
Okay.
that's definitely one of my superpowers. Back in the day, it definitely was that one of my superpowers. And so when I talk about radical acceptance, it's very much the accepting the situation, the feeling, the experience, the dynamic for whatever it is. And that doesn't mean that you like it or don't like it. It doesn't mean that you're okay with it. But instead of funneling time and energy and trying to resist it or force it or gossip or complain, you actually focus your time and energy in objectively looking at what it is and accepting that, but then choosing what you want it to be beyond that within your control.
Love that. Okay. Yeah, what kind of I guess prompted you or triggered you to realize there's a different way to do this, right?
Mm.
Like what was the shift? What created the shift for you?
Yeah, I think so. This will take us back many moons.
That's okay.
When I was, yeah, mid late 20s, I had my son, and back in the day, I was the mean girl. Like I was definitely the mean girl, which most people don't believe, but it's true story, and I could give you names. And I was very caught up, like I was very guarded. I had a lot of walls. I didn't allow people to help me. It was very much, I'll hurt you before you hurt me. And I'll do it with a big smile on my face and be proud of that, which looking back, I'm just like, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
But it was recognizing at one point that I had created an island out of myself, because I wouldn't allow others in. I wouldn't allow them to provide value to me, but I was constantly trying to fix and navigate things for them, which was more of a result of just some of the trauma that happened growing up, but then also being the oldest of seven. Like it's just one of the roles that you fall into being the oldest.
Yeah.
And so it really took recognizing that first of all, it was unsustainable, but it was also a very lonely place to be.
Hmm.
And in all of those dynamics, like the mean girl and the guardedness and being hyper independent, recognize that I spent a lot of time and energy like complaining about things or being very disempowered about things. And I didn't want that to be the case.
Hmm.
So it really took paying attention to what contributed to those energy leaks. And then once I identified those things, making all these micro shifts to change that dynamic. And all of that led me to the radical acceptance piece.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I love that idea of looking for those energy leaks, right? Like when you know things just don't feel right, how am I,
Mhm.
what's happening here? You know, digging in. I think both you and I appreciate the the digging in, the like
Mhm.
is more to the story here. Depth of our lives is, you know, there's just so much there under the
Yeah.
surface that we don't always notice. So I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So this kind of all occurred like it what kind of time frame for you did this like shift in thinking occur?
Yeah, I mean, there's always levels to everything, you know,
Mhm.
you think
Sure.
you learn a lesson or you really embrace or practice very intentionally certain things. And then there's another chapter where you discover there's another layer that you can peel back and another layer that you can peel back. But
Yeah.
the time frame itself, I would say, I mean, it was years. And that was first of all, because there was so much to unpack. Second of all, because I did it myself. So it wasn't therapy, it wasn't counseling. It was literally, you know, like this would have been mid 2000s, late 2000s. So the internet was definitely a thing. So it was lots of exploring online, different things, typing in what I felt, going down a rabbit hole with those, and then trusting my intuition, but also like learning the language of what I was experiencing and shifting towards, which by myself, like that was a process of years. So it was
Right.
definitely not something that happened overnight.
Yeah.
But then there's also like very recently I experienced something where I recognized I already knew my superpower at this point is radical acceptance, or one of my superpowers. But when something happened very recently, about a month and a half ago, it was just this confirmation of how much work I've done there. Where, like, every time I hit another wave, something very challenging or very disrupting or full of a lot of grief, because of that radical acceptance, am able to navigate it very smoothly, which is a testament to my resilience, but then also to how much I've allowed that radical acceptance to smooth things out, but just feel empowered in the meantime as well.
Yeah. It's like now it's so integrated for you. It's so
Mhm.
so part of who you are that it's not like you have to go, okay, let me think about how to be this way now.
It's
It's
the
like,
default.
yeah, it's a default.
Yep,
Yeah, I love that.
yep.
Okay. So good. Um, I loved how you just talked about too, just, you know, like changes like this and the ways of thinking are process, right?
Mhm,
It takes time, but it's also like you're not having to wait to get to the end to get results. You're constantly getting like little mini platforms of new insights
mhm,
and new ways of being and new tools to tap into.
mhm.
And I love just how you kind of explained that, you know, like it's not a
Yeah,
magic thing. We didn't all get to this place of more options and more ways of thinking quickly. It's a
mhm.
process for all of us. So
Yeah, and there's certain things you can do along the way. Like I said, I did a
Mhm.
lot of that work myself, and if you're
Yep.
working with somebody like a coach or a therapist, or, you
Yep.
know, even if you have a really solid, like for me now, a lot of my very close friends, like they are of the same or similar mindsets and they have similar language. So when you have those different kind of support systems, that can definitely speed up the process, but it's also not about speeding up the process.
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
not necessarily like it's not something that's tangible generally, or where you can
Mhm.
actually measure it. More often than not, you get on the other side of a situation and it's just like, huh, I handled that really well. Growth.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. I love
Yeah.
that I handled that differently. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And this kind of speaks to that, I guess, a little bit, but what's been the most rewarding thing about seeing this shift for you and really, you know, knowing that there's a different way that you approach even the hard stuff.
Mhm. There's a couple things. So one is definitely like being able to lead by example, and that can be with clients, it can be with friends and family. acquaintances, but being able to go through something really hard and do it with grace and feeling the whole range of emotions that comes up with that, and not being in denial and not shoving them down or avoiding them, but actually allowing those things, like allowing yourself to feel your way through them and modeling that, not only shows that it can be done safely, but also how to do it, you know, how to sit with those more uncomfortable things, but then also that we can still thrive in the midst of a big challenge. So that's definitely one thing. Can you repeat the question too?
Yeah, just like what's been the most rewarding, pieces, I guess. And like,
Right. And
yeah,
so, yeah, the other thing is just that acknowledgement of how much ease there can be, again going back to that thriving piece,
Mhm.
and once you are able to radically accept something and focus your time and energy on things that are supportive instead of disempowering,
Mhm.
um just how magical, and how much resistance you don't have to plug into through the course of a process, which means that you save yourself pain.
Yeah. And
So
time worrying about all those other things,
mhm,
right? Like
mhm,
sometimes it's like, oh, wow, by working on this side, it's actually
yeah,
solving this other thing we wouldn't have
yes.
known.
Yes. And also, like, sometimes it's not solving something, but sometimes
Sure.
we can dramatize things, or we can tell ourselves that something is a problem, but that's
Mhm.
because we're either trying to forcing or resist or just making it dramatic. And when you remove that energy, all of a sudden there's not nearly as many problems as we think there are.
Right. Yes. I
So,
always talk about like where we shine our flashlight, is what we're
uh-huh,
gonna notice, right? And so it's
uh-huh.
like when we shine it always on the problem, what do we pay attention to and what gets bigger? It's like the
Yeah.
problem grows because we shine a light on it too, right?
Yep.
So when we start to shift where we put that flashlight, it does help. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about like what you noticed with your energy, and
Mhm,
maybe even health or kind of like general well-being
mhm.
as you look back on kind of how you were being and now how you're being with the radical acceptance. Just tell me a little bit about what you
Yeah.
noticed in that realm.
Yeah. So, as far as all of those things, so one of the things that people tell me a lot, and I know this is true, and it's definitely a huge benefit to the coaching I do as well, is the fact that I have a very calming, reassuring presence.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that when I am around somebody that you need to be that way, but it just naturally kind of helps you acclimate to that versus feeling like things are chaotic or dramatic.
Mhm.
So it's definitely affected things in that regard. And even like that, situation I was mentioning about a month and a half ago, when I was going through all of that, yes, there were a few days of some very heavy feeling, lots of grief, disappointment, sadness, but at the same time, like still being able to plug into joy around myself. And that's something that I've definitely worked really hard to make sure is part of who I am just by default again.
Yeah.
And didn't used to be that way. So just being able to enjoy things in the midst of chaos and challenge.
Mhm.
As far as health wise, I mean, I am a huge advocator. Like, one of the things I talk about a lot is boundaries that keep you in your integrity. So making it less about the difference between me and you, or my preference versus your preference, or this wall needs to go here, and more about like, how do I best show up and honoring that. So, when you talk about health, it's like, it's making sure that I eat things that provide me nutrients, or being aware, like if I compromise my sleep or I spend too much time worrying, or if I don't move enough, like I know how my body's going to feel and how my brain isn't going to work.
Mhm.
So just making sure that I do those things that support me. So in that radical acceptance piece, that really helps me stay plugged into and intentional with and creating this default mode of just always having that calm, reassured, empowered baseline where pretty much no matter what is going on around me, even if it is super chaotic, that I can still stay in a very calm, present, empowered space, because I'm not reacting to the things that are happening around me or even in me.
Yeah, I was thinking that word reactive too. It's like
Mhm.
that's been reduced, that
Uh-huh.
reactivity for you. Yeah.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
I can I feel like I'm on the process of all of these same things, Rebecca, so I can
Mm,
totally relate. We could probably talk
okay.
for hours about all these
Yeah.
things,
It's a
but
good place to be.
yeah, definitely. Definitely always a process and always, I think there's never a place and a time where we've fully arrived, right? So
Oh,
like
no.
something new can be thrown at us at all times. So
Yeah.
I love how you're
And our
talking about it's like the chaos around can be there, and yet I'm still grounded in who I am, what it is that I'm bringing, or how I
Mhm.
value me is still in the core of that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's like being the eye of the storm,
Yeah.
basically. And not that you're creating the storm, but if it is happening and it is around you and you can't control whether you are or aren't part of the situation, I mean,
Mhm.
that's still a beautiful place to be. So
Yeah, definitely. Very, very good place to be compared to
yeah.
many others.
Like in the middle of the storm.
Yeah. Yep. Or creating the storm, right? I mean, we both have
Mm-hmm.
our tendencies. I know, just different stages in my life. I feel like there's been different places where I've grown, right? And so I think
Mm-hmm.
like similar to how you were talking about kind of that mean girl space, it's like I had different storms that maybe I was adding
Mm-hmm.
to, right? And I always kind of felt like they were happening to me, but I was
Mm.
adding to them now when I look
Yep.
back. So totally.
Yep.
Yeah. So, what do you think what have you learned along the way that's maybe really
Mm-hmm.
helpful for our listeners to hear, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
even just some like words of wisdom about how to get started even in this?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
I mean, the to get started, the biggest thing is just developing awareness about yourself. So paying attention to going back to those energy leaks, like what really seems to
Hmm.
steal my energy or maybe manipulate my energy? Where do I experience these really low lows or these just where it feels like somebody is what do I want to say? Like we're at the mercy of the things going around us, right? Because we're more often than not at the mercy of things, but that's just how it feels, either because we've learned that behavior because of it being modeled around us or thought processes that we've been conditioned to. So the big thing is just awareness. And then really looking at like, is that how I want to feel? Like one of the things I always talk about in my coaching is choosing an emotional goal, because we can talk all day about how we don't want to feel and whether we're venting or complaining or it's just out of a place of awareness. But how often do we talk about how we want to feel? And if you can't identify how you want to feel, how are you going to know the things that bring you that feeling?
Yeah.
So the biggest piece of that is just identifying like, how do I want to feel? And then paying attention to things that actually feed that feeling or give that feeling and doing more of those things, but then not giving as much time and an energy to the other things that detract from that feeling. So
Yeah.
that's probably the biggest thing. Um, yeah, that's like my main thing is just that awareness. And also the other thing, not judging yourself. Like there's
Mhm.
so often, so many women talk about needing to be fixed or I'm broken or how I think like we don't want to sit with our feelings because they're right, wrong, good or bad. And that's just not the case. So it's removing that judgment of ourself and or the situation or the circumstances.
Mhm.
Um, again, that radical acceptance. And instead of judging yourself, like getting curious around it, like, why do I feel that way? And that helps build the awareness too, because it's about understanding yourself.
Mhm.
How you feel isn't wrong. It's never wrong. It's just how you feel. But are you going to do anything with the information you get from how you feel? Like that's the key
Yeah.
to it. So just really sitting with that and pay attention, because we more often than not want to run away from our feelings because they are uncomfortable, but they have so much beautiful information for us if we're willing to be a little uncomfortable and really sit with them, learn how to feel them, but also pay attention to what they're trying to tell us and honor those things.
Yes, I love that. So much of our work is so similar, Rebecca, because I do a lot with emotions too. I think like it's so
Mm-hmm.
hard to sit with the frustration emotions, the fear emotions, right? Those ones that just are like we're trying to get away from a lot of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at this stage in our lives, we have to learn to kind of embrace them and yeah, let them be information to us. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's tricky to even learn how
Mm-hmm.
to know what you're feeling and, just a lot more that we can do around paying attention to how our body feels with those
Mm-hmm.
emotions and so many things. So,
Yeah.
yes, I
Well,
love that.
even that piece, like Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart, have you read
Mhm.
that or listened to
Yeah.
it? Yeah. So
Yep.
like that's one of the best resources for that, because she has 87 different feelings and emotions in there and describes what each one is, but then also shares what near enemies of them are and puts them into groups of like, these are very similar things, but this is why they're different. And so if you don't have that information, even in her book, she said most adults can only name three emotions, like happy,
Right.
sad, and angry. And
Yep.
so when you don't understand what it is, not
Mhm.
only do you not understand yourself, but then you don't have the language to kind of set the expectation for how to navigate it, let alone communicate what you need with yourself or with other people.
Mhm.
So resource like that is so excellent, because you don't know what you don't know, but there's tons of information out there. Sometimes we just don't know what we're looking for or how to look. So that's a beautiful
Yeah.
place to start for that.
Definitely. Yeah, I love all those definitions she's got and just like the
Hmm.
tiny nuance of them. It's
Oh
like, ooh,
yeah.
it makes you think, you know?
Uh-huh.
So good. Yeah. All right. So, what would you say, I guess, who else or what else has kind of benefited in because of your kind of brave shift, right? Like,
Mm.
I think I always like to think about sometimes it's hard for us to make shifts for ourselves or get that momentum at the beginning.
Hmm.
But I love to think about just like the peripheral impact too when we get brave and when we make
Hmm.
shifts, what else happens in our life. So
Yeah.
any
Oh
insights
yeah.
on that?
I mean, honestly, it's going back to that leading by example piece. Once you can be brave enough to be the one that is making the shift, whether you're doing it alone or you're the one that goes first. So some of what I've seen with that is like with my sisters, where there were things back in the day that our family just didn't talk about or that we didn't address, or it almost felt like we were wrong to bring those things up because we were complaining or those kinds of things. But now that I have really started to, it's that emotional intelligence piece. So now that I've really started to dive into how I feel navigating that, doing it with grace and compassion and just love for myself and for other people, they have seen it modeled and seen how it can work out for somebody and started to take on more of those approaches for themselves too. So that's definitely an area which just deepens connection and trust between us, but also opens up that communication even more, where we can either just share what we're feeling and say what we need, instead
Right.
of making assumptions or being passive aggressive about it, but then
Yep.
also, can communicate to each other and increase each of our languages because of what we're sharing and providing different or perspectives. So that's definitely a key area with my clients. Like, the more I understand about myself, the more I can share with other people, like, because I have such a deep awareness of why I am the way I am, but also what you can shift and how you can shift it, that knowledge benefits them too, because that's what I share with other people. So,
Yeah.
the more that I experience things or create those shifts or experience those shifts, I take what I learned to the people that I'm working with and extend those resources and that understanding to them too. So, I mean, there's it obvious, it's a beneficial for everybody really, but like
Yeah.
it's everywhere, especially when you're talking about something like this, like creating more calm, creating more ease, experiencing more joy. So yeah.
Yeah. Yep. It's like snowball effects for
Mhm.
sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Totally. Well, I love that. Well, is there anything else? Tell us a little bit about your year-long coaching program and
Mhm.
tell us, what that looks like for people if they were interested in kind of checking out any more about that. And we can drop
Yeah.
some information about that in
Yeah.
our group too.
Okay. So for me, I'm like I said, or like you said, actually, I'm Rebecca Thomas, more than a life coach. I work mainly with women, not because I have anything against men. I'm just very passionate about women in general, helping us get out of our own way, helping us better understand ourselves and accept ourselves is a huge piece of it. So I mainly work with 30 to 50 something women who have scaled professionally, climbed the corporate ladder, might even be pivoting in their careers, and they're looking out on their lives, taking an audit, realizing that one thing is missing, and it's them. So I help them get out of their heads, out of their houses, out of their businesses, and back into their lives. And not to say that we are telling you to get away from your family or to step back from a business, but just really taking time to appreciate like the reprioritization that really comes into that midlife unraveling and pay attention to like the coping mechanisms that just aren't working anymore. helping find clarity around like, okay, these are my values and priorities now, but what do I want to do with them? And just really connecting the pieces, but also making sure that we pull back more, or step back from that busy hustle, go, 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 and learn to have a better quality of life with more presence, and just enjoy what we're here for. So all of the things that we do contribute to you showing up as the best version of yourself in all areas of your life.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Sounds good. And tell them where they can find more about you if they want to. I know your website. You know your website better than I do.
Yeah. Yeah. So my website, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn are all under Maria Venus. So mariavenus.com or at Maria Venus on the other platforms is where you'll find me. That's its own story. And if you end up on Facebook, then you'll find a little story about why it's Maria Venus. And not just Rebecca Thomas, more than a life coach, but that's where you can find me.
Okay. Sounds great, Rebecca. Well, thanks so much. Is there anything else that you want to share or like last, I guess, words that you want to share with our audience?
Yeah. I mean, the big thing I always say is just be kind to my friend. And my friend is whoever hears this. You know, a lot of times, especially if we struggle with personal worth, self-value, it's really hard to justify prioritizing ourselves or being kind to ourselves, even though if we gave advice to practically any other woman or female, we would tell them to be kind to themselves, but we're not really good at taking that advice for ourselves. So I always say, be kind to my friend, because it has the same outcome with a different motivator, but eventually, hopefully you'll fall enough in love with yourself that you'll be kind to yourself for the right reasons.
Love that. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Well, thanks so much for being here today, Rebecca,
Yeah.
and talking about just your shift and how that has helped your life so much. So
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it.
definitely. All right. You can stay on and we'll touch base after, but
Okay, sounds good.